Good to have you here, everybody, on a Wednesday night. 6:59 p.m. And what are we going to do? There's too much. There's too much. We got a great guest. Hopefully the audio sounds really good for you guys, because we were working on some things last night over here after the show. Stayed a little bit later and did a little bit of troubleshooting with Petey Face, because the audio was not to my liking, especially with the other, I don't know, it was weird. It was one of those Nintendo moments last night, NES. It was one of those NES moments last night where we had some problems we wanted to diagnose, and literally it was just an unplug, plug it back in, blow on this, lick that, suck this, and then suddenly it's everything's fine again. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know. You know when you have a problem and you solve it and you don't know what you did? That sucks. Or blows. Anyway, we have a lot of things that we can go to tonight, but we've got Ben Davidson coming on the show. At least we confirmed, and information has been exchanged, and that should be happening around 7:15. We'll have him for the first hour, and in the second half, obviously there's a lot of time to digest what we talk about, because we'll be discussing solar weather. We'll be talking about the continent-wide auroras that we were able to see a couple of weeks ago, because we weren't able to talk about that since. I wanted to get him on the record for some things and ask him some questions, but now we have some more activity out there. Then that might be heading our way, so we'll see what happens with that. And then it's going to be in the second half, I'm hoping, pure open lines, because there's a lot. I know that there is the jury has convened for the night with the Trump case in New York, and one way or another, tomorrow could be a very historic day on a very historic and tumultuous year. So that'll be something to consider. And whatever else you bring to the table, that'll be nice as well. That's tonight. That's tonight on Quite Frankly, on this May 29th, 2024, as we're making our way toward June, which is a great month, because you know what month it is, right? It is Badass Month, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We are coming up on Badass Appreciation Month. That is starts on June 1st. Every night on this show, we have a different badass from history, the history of mankind. It's not just American history. It's from all over the place. People who did badass things. And we collect these badass nominations over the course of the year. I find a lot of them. You guys and gals send a lot in. We stockpile of them. Some bleed over to the year. You know, some of them are members of your family that we've done. And I'm so happy that it's coming around again. There you go. So you want to have something nice to keep focused on in June, and not all the other crap, the absolute crap. Reject that. Do something nice for yourself and your soul. All right, let's see here. First one up. Oh, first thing I want to say is, ladies and gents, for those of you who are doing book club with us, sorry, from last night. Oh, I'm telling you, it sticks with you. We're doing Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. Sounds like I drank some dandelion wine before I came on here. That's going to be Monday nights in June with Charlie Robinson, and I have put up the first sessions forum post on quitefrankly.tv. So go to quitefrankly.tv. There it is. Session 1, Dandelion Wine, Ray Bradbury. We're going from the beginning, which is the introduction, until you hit page 68 in paperback. or 74 hardcover. You all know all of Ray Bradbury's very doomy, gloomy, and intense books. He was able to diagnose things in a very cutting, precise way. This is a wonderful summertime read. From everything I have been able to take from it, do it with us, ladies and gentlemen. Become a sponsor and do it with us. And there you have it. Okay, let's see. First one. Oh, listen to this. Now, anybody in the Lubbock, Texas area, you got to get in touch with me and let me know how the hell this worked out for you the other day. Colin McCarthy, Worldwide Weather Extreme, he's a storm chaser, one I haven't heard about until this. He put this out here. Breathtaking satellite imagery of the severe thunderstorm that produced DVD-sized hail the other night on May 28th. Last night, I guess. West of Lubbock, Texas, causing major damage. Take a look at that. That's from above the cloud cover. And DVD-sized hail. That means 5-inch diameter hail. 5-inch diameter. I mean, that's death. That's death to anybody that's hit square in the head with that. From that altitude, I mean, geez. So anybody near the Lubbock area, if you had any of these things fall in your backyard or on your, I mean, what is it? Let me know what your experience was like, because I've heard about, I've seen plenty of videos of big hailstorms but man, when I saw some of these pictures, that's nuts. Here's a little something for you too. And I guess for Ben Davidson as well, because he's always talking about how lovely Denver is. From the National Desk, Denver to replace police officers with drones for some 911 calls amid budget cuts. The Denver Police Department will soon use drones as first responders after the city cut millions from the force's budget to aid migrants. Gross. Just disgusting. Got a lot in common with Denver. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, what a quisling, announced in April a plan to cut a combined $45.9 million worth of expenses from city agencies. The police department alone received a cut of $8.4 million. No, what should happen is that the people whose income was stolen to constitute that $45.9 million should be given a choice of a refund or to divert it toward whatever, or to say, no. I actually like what I'm getting for this money. I don't like a lot of what I get back for the things I pay into in this country, but I actually like having a robust police department. I like, the DPW, the way they operate. I like Parks and Recreation and all that stuff, whatever. They just, no. Your money is ours. We will spend it how we like. Disgusting. I hate it all. I'm not even going to get into it. It's too personal. My hatred is building. The police department alone receives a cut of $8.4 million, while the fire department budget was slashed by $2.5 million. Fire department. You could say, oh, well, the police department out there is corrupt or something or other, or what? I mean, it's inflated like the defense budget or whatever the hell it is. But fire? You're going to cut down on fire? A major metropolitan area? Millions? $2.5 million? My gosh. The DPD spokesperson confirmed that the National Desk Tuesday, drones are becoming a more substantial part of the operations and could soon replace humans for some 911 calls. Like what? They said they're expecting to launch its drone program within the next 6 months, thanks to a $100,000 grant from Denver Police Foundation. There's more money taken away from the police for bullshit. Drones could also be used to provide additional information about crime scenes to help police officers determine the correct response. So what are they going to do? The concept is also being used in some situations by the New York City Police Department, of course. NYPD has 85 drones, has increased usage of them over 419% in limited circumstances, such as examining structural integrity of buildings and policing large crowds. How does a drone police a large crowd? Gas them? Like, what are you doing? Drop grenades? I don't get it. Going to respond to domestic violence calls? It's crazy. But then again, crazy is the name of the game. Okay. Here's one for you. I thought this was great. This was a woman who went on television with her dog that she's abusing by turning the dog into a vegetarian, and wanted to go out there and speak for this animal and saying, well, he loves living a vegetarian life and all that other stuff. And no, it's for everybody. It's for everybody and all that. But then, of course, they surprise them, and you'll see what happens. They bring out 2 separate dog bowls with vegetables, steamed vegetables, how the dog likes it, and then, of course, meat. And you'll see, I guess just nature is going to write this joke, but here it is. Take a look at this.
And she seemed to perk up, be a lot happier.
Does she like it straight away? Like, you put that food down, she doesn't turn her nose up?
She likes more of the wet food type thing. It's more palatable as she's drinking those water.
Water. There used to be a time that I thought the British people were just smarter because of the way they talk. And do you realize, nope, they're just as fucking dumb as we are.
But no, really took to it.
2 bowls here, right?
Oh, no.
One is full of vegetables and one is full of meat.
Oh, amen.
Storm.
Now, this is where the woman is just shitting herself because she's just like, oh, no. Oh, no. Well, we know what's going to happen. Now, the dog is like, oh, my God. Is this for real? No.
Storm, we hate to put the temptation in front of you,
You
but
ready
it's
for
over you.
lunch, Storm?
Right?
Oh, I'm
Let her go.
Should I let her go?
Let her go.
Oh, she's obviously going to go. Obviously. Are you
wait. She's obviously going to go what? Why is it obviously that she's going to go toward the meat, lady? Why is it? Because it's nature. That's nature. But I'm here to break spirits and bend nature to my will. That's what she does. That's what she's here for. And my delete button just popped off of my keyboard. Gonna have to suck that onto place later again. Here, let's watch the rest of it.
Yes.
I didn't swear.
Good, chow down.
There is a selection.
Oh, no. Taking it out. What do you say?
Yeah, chow down. That's like a prison. Like before your execution, you can have anything you want. Oh man. See, that's it. That's it. That's like when one of those parents of alphabet kids probably noticed that they're coming out of one phase or another. Like, no, you little, because you heard what she said when the dog started walking toward the meat. You little, like, you stinker. Oh, do you? This was about me the whole time. Anyway, here's another one for you. Here's a guy, I don't know who the hell he is, on MSNBC. Goes out there to literally talk about how he has a crush on the judge in New York because of the Trump trial. Listen to this.
As you've noted, with respect to Judge Marchand, I mean, I am like now, I have like a man crush on him. He is such a great judge that it's hard to see that the jurors wouldn't have the same impression. I mean, you just keep on thinking, if you looked in a dictionary for like judicial temperament, that's what you get.
We'll talk a little bit about this more later on, because I'm sure some of you have some of the media coming out is ridiculous, but there's nothing more satisfying for weak, sexually inadequate, quisling men who get to watch a stronger type that they could never really stack up to in high school or whatever get taken down by proxy. Because it's never going to be them. It's never actually going to be them that goes and what the hell is this wet noodle man going to ever do to anybody? Okay? If he sees somebody that is the embodiment of all of the male authority he hated in his life, his father, whatever the hell it is, and he wants to see just somebody taken down a peg because he just doesn't like anything about them, their aura. He's the one that loves to have it done by proxy, to let the courts, to let the men and women in black dresses to go out there and decree something, and then other bigger men with guns comes out and gets a little satisfaction for that one. Has a man crush on the Juan guy. So it's just nutty. It's nutty and it's gross. I guess this is how MSNBC was getting everybody ready for Pride Month in a couple of hours. But there you have it. We'll be right back at the other end of this intro, hopefully with Ben Davidson. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, and we will be back in a flash.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!
Welcome. It's 7:15 p.m. on the East Coast. Going to get around to a call with Ben Davidson, the Suspicious Observer. He's with us tonight. We've got a lot of cool things to discuss. Here's one thing I thought that the Denver thing would be one other, but take a listen to this one. Jeff Bezos spent $42 million to build a massive clock that ticks just once a year for the next 10,000 years. But why? Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon.com, invested $42 million in a monumental project, a clock designed to last for 10,000 years. The extraordinary clock is under construction inside of a mountain in West Texas, according to Fox News. 10,000 years. Wow. Let's see here. Bezos first announced his intention to get behind the clock in 2011, saying, "It's a special clock designed to be a symbol, an icon for long-term thinking." According to Daily Mail, construction reportedly started in 2018. A 500-foot tall clock, a vision of computer scientist Danny Hillis, engineered to endure for thousands of years. It operates using Earth's thermal cycles, incorporating elements such as solar synchronizers, a pendulum, a chime generator, and various gears and dials. The clock will tick once a year, a unique feature emphasizing its long-term purpose. Boy, something else right there. Well, listen, I want to get around to this, and we're going to bring him on right now. Now, returning to the show is Ben Davidson, the Suspicious Observer himself. 7 months ago, we spoke with Ben about the impact of solar cycles on the Earth, its basic movement, positioning, and the basic function, how it impacts the basic function of us, the Earth's inhabitants. So we spoke about that, the timelines, the pole shift, and everything else, and now it's 7 months later, an eclipse later, and several mammoth solar storms later, and Ben is back to chat with us. Ben, how you feeling tonight, my man?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's another wonderful day.
Yeah, it is. It actually is. If I don't think about the work that you do, I feel every day can't ever be tarnished at all. But then I go and check up on you and what you're doing, and I get brought back down to earth, and I think, okay, let's start planning. I'm being too lazy sitting.
I'm good for that. Good for that. That's for sure.
I know. I feel like all my days relaxing. I should be digging a bunker or something like that instead. Put myself to work. But I have some questions for you. First one, Denver. I hear it sucks out there. Did you hear about the police drones they're going to roll out?
I did not specifically hear about that. That city about an hour north of me is becoming more and more draconian by the month. It's just an absolute hellish thing to imagine having to actually live up in Denver. Well, that would be brutal. I'm about an hour south in Colorado Springs, and that's too close for my liking.
Now, when you make the considerations for where you are, is it based on Is it based on how many feet above sea level? Is it that? What other considerations? Are you a Joel Skousen a fan, or as far as strategic relocation goes, what are the considerations you make?
Well, elevation is a huge one. And what's coming, every cycle, there's evidence of massive tsunamis. Some go coast to coast in a continent. And so you need to be pretty far up away from the ocean. The other thing you look for is big cities. You don't want to be in one. You don't want to be too close to one. I wouldn't post up here, even though it's an hour's drive away from Denver, and there's not going to be a ton of driving when this thing happens. But still, somebody could walk that in a couple of days. My location is about an hour further south from here, and sort of wrapping around the mountains a little bit. I'd say if you are more than 60 to 90 minutes drive from a big city, that's pretty good. You don't want to be near any major fault lines. Sorry to everyone who is picturing the Ozarks as their new Eden. The new Madrid fault line is going to rock that place to bits. Not to mention that there's millions of people who plan to go there, so it might as well be a big city. There are some select volcanoes that concern me pretty tremendously. You want to be thinking about the climate where you are, because there's not going to be any electricity when the magnetic field gets weak enough. The sun's just going to take it away. And so whether it's the heat of summer in somewhere like Phoenix or it's the brutal winter in somewhere like Montana, you have to ask yourself, okay, if I don't have any power, can I survive this climate? So those are kind of the things that you want to think about in general.
You came on, I think, on December 6th, and in January was the first series of my book club that I do here. We read about 5 books together a year, and the first one that we did was that, well, you can call it a sci-fi, I don't know, classic, Lucifer's Hammer. Now, that was all about a comet impact, but as far as the impact and what was done to the Earth, you came up at least every episode that we did in analyzing the chapters, because when we talk about tidal waves and slosh back, and then, of course, once everything calms down, the global storms calm down, then there is just this idea of whoever remains using the pieces of the old world to start rebuilding civilization again. And it's just something that's been on my mind. And then, of course, we have things that was going on in the last couple of weeks with the storms, and I want to ask you about that in particular. Well, actually, before we get to that, you just put out a video, short one, about 2 hours ago. It seems that there's some activity ramping up. We might be in the path of some solar flares again.
Yeah, we had a pretty record-breaking solar storm event at the beginning of the month, and the sun takes about 28 days to do a full rotation. So when something rotates out of the view of the Earth, half of that time to go around the backside, 2 weeks, and it's back again, and it's firing more solar flares, and it'll be directly facing the Earth in another couple of days. It released a pretty solid little solar flare here earlier this morning. A nice little warning to all of us living here on this blue and green planet that it's back for round 2. It caused quite the show at the beginning of the month. Most people probably heard about the aurora, the northern lights and the southern lights. Maybe you even saw them. But the extent of those was something that didn't get talked about in the news. About half the government's high-frequency radio communications technology was glitching out during the solar storm. That would include, Pacific Command talking to the Pentagon, things like that. There were over 300 regional to national networks that went down, a major surge in electrical fires and infrastructure disruption. But what's really telling is just how much those northern lights were seen. And the reason is because what hit the Earth, while it was significant, what hit the Earth wasn't record-breaking. The effects were record matching or record breaking. And, I can't remember exactly how much we went into this when we talked before, but the Earth has been taking those higher levels of effects from less and less and less and less from the sun because our protection from the sun, Earth's magnetic field, is weakening. We're in a pole shift, a magnetic pole shift, sometimes called a geomagnetic excursion. And so for many very rare auroral sighting zones around the world, they got to see them earlier this month. Some that hadn't been seen in 50 years, some that hadn't been seen in 150 years, some had never seen the aurora before. And okay, if we had a record-breaking solar flare, I get that. But it wasn't a record-breaking solar flare, and it was sort of, it was above modest. It was relatively strong solar activity, but it wasn't major, it wasn't severe, it wasn't extreme. It was relatively strong solar activity, and yet it broke or matched almost every auroral record that we have here on the planet. And the only way that's possible is if our shield against these things is weakening to a much, much greater degree. This was something that was hinted at in a paper about that hit the scientific journals about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and something we had suspected because while this was the record matching / record breaking event, we had seen tiny little blips from the sun causing moderate to strong auroral outbreaks and moderate to strong solar storms. And for the better part of last year and the start of this year, we were saying, guys, the only explanation for why this relatively normal solar activity is creating relatively abnormal effects here on Earth is this magnetic pole shift that we're in. It must have hit another acceleration point, and we must be tanking much faster. And we learned in April that acceleration, the strongest magnetic anomaly they've ever seen, happened in March of 2023, which explains what happened all throughout last year that had me running my mouth and very few people listening. It explains why this relatively strong but not extreme solar event at the beginning of the month broke auroral records. We hit the highest level of geomagnetic storm that we can have. We are on the long way down now, and it's just getting worse and worse.
And I was going to bring that up because that was something for me that I had caught. And it was in part that the fact that you and I had this conversation the last time you were on, and I've been a subscriber of yours for a while, so I picked things up along the way. And that I felt was a pretty significant revelation that was baked into whatever kind of mainstream reporting these storms were getting, is that I learned that there have been bigger storms in my lifetime that were far less noticeable. I said, if the storms have been bigger in the past in my lifetime and far less noticeable, then what does that say about the Earth's magnetic defense? It goes back to what Ben was talking about. I got to ask him about this, and of course, there you go.
So here's a good way to put it. The last great solar storm was 2003, known as the Halloween storms. They were basically, there were aurora visible across a large portion of the world during Halloween of 2003. It was actually the first aurora I ever saw. I saw it from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it looked orange for Halloween. It was quite the thing. And, I thought it was cool, but I didn't really understand what I was seeing. Back then, I just turned 18. I just turned 18. But what hit the Earth from the sun was probably 10 times stronger than what hit at the beginning of this month. And yet these auroras this month were way, way bigger. Let's go back to the only solar super flare that has happened that human beings have had any kind of technological advancement during. 1859, the Great Carrington Event solar storm. That was 40 to 50, maybe even 60 times greater than what we had earlier this month in terms of what the sun threw at us. And yet this storm matched it, or in some cases actually outdid what that storm produced here on Earth. And it was 40, 50, 60 times stronger of a solar blast that hit us. That's an enormous red flag.
Well, let me ask you.
It's the kind of thing where, okay, if you live on the coast of Florida and a hurricane comes and it blows out your windows and causes roof damage, sure, you're probably distraught, but you're not thinking that that's anything unusual. You're like, well, I live on the coast of Florida. This can happen. This is a risk I knew about. If you've got a gentle summer breeze and it starts blowing out windows and it, carries off your lawn furniture and your poodle, you're going to be like, whoa. What was that all about? This is just a gentle summer breeze. Why is it doing all of this stuff right here? That's the kind of thing we're talking about, where you'd have to say, okay, wait, there's something else going on that can't be explained with the normal way we're using it. And it just so happens that, we had been suggesting, hey guys, the only answer is Earth's magnetic field is weakening even faster now. And then it's a very good thing that we got that paper, because I would still just be running my mouth with my best guess at this point. But
well, go to 2003.
One of the best geophysicists in the world came out with that. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, to expand on that, go back to 2003 and take that storm. I was about 18 or so back then too. Take that storm that was 10 times stronger than what we just experienced a couple of weeks ago. What do you think would have happened to us over here in 2024 if we would have experienced that 2003 storm right now? That's the first thing that popped up in my mind. You speculate a little bit.
So I would say definitely we would have had some major grid outages. Definitely there would have been some major grid outages. And it's possible it could have been what they call the solar kill shot, where the entire global grids are taken out. And when everyone is down, there's no coming back from that. There's no communication. There's nobody coming to fix anything. All the manufacturing plants are disabled. Even the transformers, if you've got extra ones, they're fried too, kind of stuff. And so, it's very possible that could have been the solar kill shot if something of that power hit us, but definitively we would have had some major grid outages. We had minor grid outages and other infrastructure disruptions with this storm. You take it times 10 and we've definitely got problems. I imagine, you've got an audience base who likes to keep track of things. A lot of people might not know that this was one of the heaviest severe weather months on planet Earth in several decades. The ones in the United States with the tornadoes and the derecho in Houston made big news, but there was massive flooding in several different places. Some of the worst of it was in Brazil, and absolutely horrifying cyclones slammed India and Bangladesh, washed away 35,000 homes. This was one of the worst weather months that this planet has had in a couple of decades. And it all began just 3 days after the major solar flares began. And, one of the things I talk about all the time is the sun's effect, not only on our technology, but on the weather. And it's not surprising it's unfortunate, but it's not surprising to see that these things are coming to fruition here.
Well, knowing your work, and if there's that kind of activity that's going on outside of our planet that's bombarding us, I know that is analyzing that and trying to measure its impact on operations and life over here on the surface is going to be your priority. But there's something outside of that, and I know you must have responded to this 1,000 times, but I saw it pop up so much I had to write it down for tonight, and that is things like HARP. We talk about HARP a lot over here, just knowing its capabilities, what it's been used for in the past, localized things, geoengineering, sun dimming, all that. So we know that there's a lot of things, a lot of operations being run on this planet. But there's a contingent of people who refuse to believe that the continent-wide auroras could have been anything but HARP, which I couldn't even fathom, and I'm not as well versed in anything as you are, and even in the other way. And we track the usage of this technology a lot. So, what are your thoughts about this? Where does it fall short of explaining the kind of stuff that we saw 2 weeks ago, in particular?
Sure. So, from a science perspective, HARP's not capable of doing that. It can ionize the atmosphere and the ionosphere above it in about a 14 to 21 degree angle from ground. When they turn it off, it goes back to normal within about 3 or 4 minutes. They were using it in the days prior to these solar storms. But again, when they stopped using it, it was minutes before everything went back to normal. And I went back and I looked, they were running it at a very small fraction of the power. I've been looking into HARP since 2011. I remember when they turned it on full power the first time I was looking. You could see it on radar, on ionosondes, in the critical frequency, on radiosondes. You could see it on every data thing. They're not hiding it. And I think that the most effect it did was it stalled a high pressure cell for a few minutes. There was no major storm activity that came from that or anything like that. A lot of people don't know that the main thing that they do with HARP is actually an enhancement of ULF communications with submarines. The most important thing to know about HARP is that the vast majority of their experiments were abject failures. This was when it was a "you're dead if you talk" secret. And then all of a sudden, this kill level secret project, in the span of 90 days, 4 books came out, highly publicized. A TV show on the History Channel about HARP that featured actor/politician Jesse Ventura. Boy, do we trust actors and politicians. And then they had the whistleblowers risking their lives, giving talks all over the country. Them just handing us on an enemy on a silver platter and saying, go scream about this on the internet. That's called a limited hangout, PSYOP, psychological operation. It failed miserably to do anything, to do any of the secondary things they wanted it to do. One of the things they thought it might be able to do was ionize the ionosphere so much that it could stop incoming missiles if, say, Russia or China fired them over the North Pole. Even that failed. Everything that they've done with it, other than slight ionospheric plasma modulation, has largely failed. And then they took what was literally if you talk about this, you're going to die level secret. And then they just flooded the internet with all the information about it. They handed us this enemy on a silver platter. And for people who have the eyes to see and be thinking like this, that should be their biggest red flag. Because you don't take something that is a kill level secret and then in the span of 90 days, it's got its own website. They're announcing everything they have to do with it. There's dozens of publications. There's books, a TV show, whistleblowers giving talks about. They infiltrated our community with that one. And, the only other thing I'll say is when they had it on full power, which was literally about 700 to 1,000 times stronger than what they did earlier this month, not a single auroral sighting was seen. Not one. At the end of the day, they not only wanted to keep us distracted and misdirected off of what was really going on, but they want the idea out there that they are super powerful. They do this fraudulently, like they did with HARP, and they do this with real things. So, for example, when the Pentagon released all of that Navy UFO footage, that's U.S. government technology. And they released it on purpose so that they could, one, placate our community, but also look to the other countries and be like, hey, other countries, you know those aren't aliens. Look what we got. Look what we got. They're flexing. And so it's one thing to wake up, to have your eyes open, and to be able to see some of the nefarious things going on. But there is another level when you realize that they have infiltrated this community to an unreal degree, an unreal degree. And it's necessary to have that mindset, but that's just walking in the door. When you walk in the door, there's 1,000 things on the table. Most of them aren't real. And
it's like the selection of the Grail, which is the real Grail. And well, you know what? Let me ask you this question: when you talk about revelation, who knows what's being given, limited hangout. When you do what we do in media, along the way, especially people are recognizing your work, people drop info on you all the time in email. Some of it is credible, some of it's just interesting. Most of it could be a LARP, bullshit, whatever. But from all the years that you've been doing this, and the people that you've spoken to, and the colleagues that you've been able to gain over time, have you been able to gain any kind of reliable idea or understanding of how far up the chain knowledge of the pole shift goes? Because I can't imagine that even senior members of Congress have been briefed about this if it is real, because they certainly don't act like it is. But as far as what is shown to the public, not very much is shown at all. So that's an example of, hey, you show people something so that they think one way or not. They're very mum on this. I don't think anybody really knows. What do you suspect?
So it goes super high up the ladder, but it doesn't hit every rung of the ladder. So, for example, there's a lot of people in Congress got a big mouth. Think about how many times stuff has gotten leaked, whether it's from somebody in Congress or a general or a colonel in the military. They're not letting them know. But I guarantee you that the people running the scene from behind the scenes and the people who sit at the highest tables, they certainly know about this. The intelligence agencies certainly know about this. The CIA has been trying to cover this up for 80 years. And when I say the highest tables, I'm talking beyond the names we get to know. When people think of the highest tables, they think of, okay, we've got, leaders of countries, we've got the leaders of the World Economic Forum, maybe the World Health Organization, NATO. If we get to see their face and know their name, chances are they're not at the highest table. Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Barack Obama, they don't sit at the highest table. The only one I've ever suspected that I think probably sits there is Queen Beatrix of, I believe, the Netherlands. You can just look at her and see something's off. But it goes pretty high up the ladder. A good example of how one would know this is, they classified Major White's Project Nanook data from the 1940s and 1950s and luckily Major White committed what could arguably be treason by keeping that data, by keeping the Pentagon documents, by keeping the scientific research from the Rand Corporation that they did for the Pentagon, showing that the Earth's magnetic poles literally flip over when this happens. The guy who put out the most famous crust displacement theory hypothesis did it in a way that was so backwards that it could easily debunked. What a lot of people don't know is he worked for the CIA, and before that he worked for the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which is what morphed into the CIA. He was in those Pentagon meetings when Major White's data and Project Nanook stuff was there, so he knew that it was a 90-degree shift and it happened in one day and it was a cyclical magnetic excursion. Yet the version he put out was this weird, absolutely backwards version of it that was easily and quickly debunked, and it almost tanked the entire field of study. There were literally, looking back a few years ago, we're talking about dying embers of the field of catastrophism that have thankfully roared back now up into a pretty substantial fire. Due to, among other things, the discovery of the Adam and Eve story and the reinsertion of that into the narrative. the data that's been coming out about Earth's magnetic field and other things like that. They don't do too much talking on it. They have put out enough into the public eye that if you're looking in the right places and you're compiling the data and you can remember the paper from 5 years ago and from 13 years ago, and you can remember the data release from 7 years ago, you can draw these connections and be like, wait a minute, this is happening faster and faster, and we're in big, big trouble when it does. And so it's almost like it's the softest of soft releases of this information, almost like they're playing some kind of game where they have to tell you something. They have to give you just the tiniest chance of figuring it out. They can't just keep it completely secret.
Well, you know, the thing that gets me is the migratory patterns of some of the elite, or I would say some of the rich and people who are politically and industrial connected. I totally get that. I'm of the same belief that, you know, the people who are really running the show, we've never really heard about, and they don't want any kind of fanfare or anything to be known about them. But we were talking about, before I took the call with you tonight, I was reading about Jeff Bezos, and I know you saw this too. Jeff Bezos building a 10,000-year clock, 500-foot, 10,000-year clock that is going to be buried inside of a mountain in West Texas. And
what a great cover story, huh?
I mean,
what a great cover story.
He's doing something elaborate, okay, with this whole symbolic thing. But everybody else they're doing similar things. I heard about, you know, everybody's got underground bunkers in Hawaii or New Zealand. Or,
So what's interesting about that? We'll get to that in just a moment. But you know, when the news came out about his Millennium Clock or whatever it is that his cover story is, this was back before Elon Musk surpassed him in terms of net worth. And so I made a video called The Disaster Plan of the World's Richest Man. Back then, Bezos was. Then other things happened, and his wife took half, and et cetera. That's the story. But what a lot of people don't know is directly across the street from where he's hollowing out this mountain, in the Sierra Diablo Mountains, in the exact area that I have time and time again said, hey, look, this is the area that's most survivable in the United States. He's hollowing out a mountain, and across the street is his Blue Origin launch facility. Not as famous as NASA, not as famous as ULA, not as famous as SpaceX, but Jeff Bezos has Blue Origin, which is a space launch facility. Literally just across the street from one another. He can go up or he can go down. I don't know what else you could possibly ask for when it comes to that. And he's not the only billionaire doing that. Elon Musk, who has SpaceX, what other company does he have? The Boring Company. He's creating underground tunnels all over the place. Now, most people know that a lot of billionaires are building bunkers. Heck, a lot of millionaires and celebrities are building bunkers. Some of them clearly have not been given the whole story, because Kim Kardashian is doing it in Los Angeles. Zuckerberg is doing it in Hawaii. A bunch of them are doing it in New Zealand. All three of those places I just mentioned are completely screwed. Nobody's
even I heard that Kauai is the one island in the chain that may have a chance at peaking above the new sea level.
It would be hard to see. You know, every single island there is volcanic.
Yeah,
they're all going to go when this happens. There's going to be some volcanoes that people think are dormant or even extinct volcanoes that we're going to find out are not actually extinct. Combine that with the waves and the great tsunamis, I can't see any part of Hawaii being survivable. Not the highest peak, not the biggest island in the very center of it, nowhere.
Take a look at this. Have you seen maps like this before? This was put out there by Open-Minded Approach.
I like that guy. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, he is. And I haven't talked to him personally yet, but how accurate would you say that this map is post-shift? Because I have to imagine that you've done simulations and...
Yeah. So it should be known that he put this out for the purpose of showing that, hey, not all, but a good portion of where the billionaires are buying land and building bunkers is within one of the prophetic maps. He doesn't necessarily think this is how it's going to go. He acknowledges that it's a possibility, but he is very open-minded, as his Twitter/X name suggests. This is close in some ways. But there's no real way to know that the area in the Atlantic is going to rise. There's no reason necessarily to think that the entire West Coast is going to subduct and be submerged in water. I think a lot of it probably will, but not to that extent. But this idea that the Gulf of Mexico is going to invade the center of the United States is absolutely almost undeniable. That one is almost a take it to the bank thing. And it's probably going to reach past the Great Lakes. For those who know what isostatic readjustment is, its more popular name is post-glacial rebound. The areas where the glaciers melted away after the Ice Age, those areas are actually rising a little bit because they're still recovering from having all that ice weight from the glaciers pushing them downward. This can happen slowly over thousands of years, like is happening in the northeast parts of the United States, or it can happen very, very rapidly. When the Gulf of Mexico invades, and basically a massive tsunami coming northward into the center of the country, you're going to have uplift within the current Gulf of Mexico and push down from the water weight on the center of the United States to the point where that map you showed, the actual tsunami is going to be much wider than that. It's going to span from the Appalachians to the Rockies. But when that recedes, there's probably going to be an enormous portion that remains underwater, something like what you are showing here right now. Whether or not that's exactly accurate, it's hard to say.
And I would like to just add that I think that this is one of those prophetic I think that this was a Gordon Michael Scallion map. I think that's what he mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, and you could look at the one that Edgar KC made, and it's a little different. There are several different ones of these, and what's interesting is they all claim to be prophetically given, and they all look different. So either they're all wrong or all but one of them is wrong. And so it's really interesting, and I know why Open-Minded picked this one, because it really shows that the billionaires do, at least some of them do, seem to have an idea of where to build versus where not to build, at least based on some information. But some of them clearly don't have all the facts. If you sat at the highest table, you would take Zuckerberg's money. Would you give Zuckerberg the whole story?
No.
I mean,
I know.
I don't think that they're all getting the full story. Otherwise, they wouldn't be building in Hawaii and New Zealand and in Los Angeles and places like that. With the fact that the Gulf of Mexico is coming directly at the Ozarks and the New Madrid fault line runs right through the area.
Yeah, take a note of that one.
You still have tons of people thinking the Ozarks are going to be the place to be, despite those facts. And so there's a big question about how much of the story is being shoveled out to these people.
Well, I was just on the coast of Maine this past week with my family, and we were at Acadia National Park, and we went up to, we did the whole loop again. We're sitting right there at these pink granite ledges and everything. And I was looking I knew you would be coming on the show the week after, and I'm just looking out at it all. The Atlantic Ocean, the pink granite. I'm up a couple of 100 feet, and I'm saying to myself, damn, so, I mean, this is the coast. Is this really going to, maybe this will peak above, I'm trying to think of how this all shakes out. And you just said right there that there's really no telling if the Atlantic really shifts or moves or consumes, too much more than it already has at all. And then I started thinking about this other thing we're starting to get into the more ancient evidence of these cycles, and that, of course, is the pyramids. There's a lot. You've been referenced quite a bit in some of these threads about the pyramids out there in Egypt.
Ethical Skeptic's a pretty solid dude, huh?
Those are very. And it's not just entertainment; it's mind blowing. It's like, yeah, it's entertaining, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, there's something about this. When he pulls up the Great Pyramids of Khufu and Giza, and out there in Giza and whatever, and you start thinking about this from a water erosion standpoint. What does that mean? Because if the Atlantic, I'm thinking about the Atlantic not moving, but then again, here we are in North Africa, and for the limestone covering of these giant pyramids to have been taken away, we're talking about hundreds of feet deep at that point.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how long it would take for ocean currents to wipe away that limestone, but it would be a lot stronger and a lot longer than a passing wave. So this was a pretty permanent thing.
I do know that it'll happen a lot faster if there's a bunch of sand in the water. It's basically getting sandblasted. And that's a big deal. The interesting thing about the stuff posted by Ethical Skeptic, and I actually don't know his real name either. I like watching it. I like checking out his stuff on Twitter. His theories are not exactly the same as mine. He's coming at it from a completely different angle, but I have surmised from some of his posts, and it's my opinion, that there's no way to say that we're not trying to talk about basically the same thing that happens cyclically on this planet and is likely coming again here very soon. I think you'd be amazed at how fast it can actually happen.
Okay.
A lot faster than a lot of people realize. And another good example for that is you get a lightning bolt big enough, it can start carving the earth. And, so like something like the Grand Canyon may not have been made in hundreds of millions of years. That could have been made in a day or two. And so when you look at something like this, you have to realize, okay, it's not just, you can't picture the ocean as it is now. The ocean heavily saturated with sand. So it's sand and water scraping, and it's moving at tremendous speeds with tremendous force. And you got to realize, okay, this may have happened within just a couple of days. And, while it's not as cool mentally to think about as these pyramids, there's a guy, his name was Michael Steinbacher. He ran the Electric Universe Geology page. And in the year before he died, he took me all around the Western United States. Just he and I got in a car and we just started driving. And he would show me these areas where it looked like there was scouring of the ground. But then at the end of the valley, there was a pileup of everything that had been scoured through the valley, where the wave crested, it slammed into a mountain range, deposited all this stuff, washed back away, and kept scouring. And the mainstream explanation for some of these geologic formations is, oh, well, over tens of millions of years, this happened. It's like, no. That happened in a day, and I can see how that happened in one day. And, I do think that some of these floods will last from 1 to 7 days when this happens and we get the great tsunamis. But that's all it's going to take to completely reshape the face of our planet.
It's incredible. It's incredible to think about, especially since we grow up and, obviously you're just theorizing about things like the Grand Canyon, but you grow up thinking, wow, the time and the patience it took for the Colorado to carve that out of the earth. And then, of course, you think about the pyramids. What were we told? Oh, well, just like the Roman Colosseum, it was deconstructed and repurposed. They took off the outer sheath of this thing and used it for another project. It was a reclamation project.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that?
It makes no sense, but it makes no sense. But for a while, at least for a child, it's like, oh, okay. Well, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the way it is. But, you know, let me ask you, what causes when you think about the Younger Dryas and that that old flood, as we bring up Atlantis, we bring up anything else, you, Jimmy Corsetti, you put all of your cards on the table back last winter, and it was really awesome. But what causes a tidal wave 400 feet high or something like that if there's no impact? That's what I would like to know.
Well, I mean, everything on Earth has inertia as we're spinning. And if the crust shifts, it's just the crust. I mean, the crust starts moving, the water's still going the way that it was going. And so if you've got your land here and you've got your water here, if the crust starts going this way, it's going to have the water push up over it. Or if there's a loss of momentum in one area relative to another, the water's going to wash up in the direction it was going. And then it will slosh back very much. I did a little experiment where I got this big clear plastic tub and I filled it about halfway with water. And then I drew with the Sharpie exactly where the water line was. And so I then slowly moved it this way and stopped it. As I moved it this way, there was a pretty good buildup, opposite of the direction I was moving. And then when I stopped it, it sloshed back and almost splashed out of the tub and made a bunch of stuff I had wet. And so any kind of crustal destabilization like that, in addition to the fact that there's probably going to be mantle heaving during this event. So you're going to have things that rise and fall in addition to changing direction of the crust. There could be a piece of the Atlantic floor that rises up. There could be areas that sink down. All of those things are going to create massive tsunamis as well. I mean, a lot of people that listen to you have probably heard of the theory about what happens if that one tiny little volcano in the Canary Islands has a landslide.
La Palma,
a tiny little volcano has a landslide, a 700-foot tsunami across the entire east coast of the United States. Okay, well, what if something the size of the United States rises up out of the water and displaces all of that? What if literally the world is going like this and then all of a sudden it starts going like this? It's unfathomable. This is how you get evidence of waves that have gone one side of a continent to another. In some of the sediments in the Gulf of Mexico, there are fossils from the northern Pacific, as well as plant matter from the Rocky Mountains. And it's all in this one layer. There are blocks in the Alps that they know had to be 2 kilometers down the hill, but something pushed these blocks, these enormous granite blocks, 2 kilometers up the mountains. We're talking powerful waves. The might of the sea taking on the land.
And so much more. You've explained this now a couple of times, just for this audience alone, how layers of earth can detach and slide and realign. But what about, I have 2 more questions just in general, and then I'll see if the audience has anything, and we'll call it a night, and I really appreciate the time. What about Earth's rotation after the pole shift? Or, even better, the length of the average day? Do you know what we know? The 24-hour day, 7 days a week, 365 a year, all based on rotation of the Earth and, the sun rising, the sun setting. What the hell is different for us? What does the average day look like? Is there any calculations that could possibly be made to estimate that?
No, in terms of giving you a definitive answer to what it will look like, but almost certainly some kind of a change. I did a video just, I think 2 or 3 days ago, where I showed all of the data on how solar flares, big solar storms on Earth, they actually make the length of a day glitch. Now, this is only by microseconds to milliseconds, but we're talking about solar storms that are 1,000 times weaker than what we expect the sun to do during this event. And we're talking about, 500,000 times less induction in terms of electricity. And to whatever extent our planet is rotating like a homopolar motor does due to electrical input from the outside, takes on an even greater role. Whether you look at that absolute peer-reviewed science or you look at religious stories like the days being shortened, I think it's very likely that we're going to have a significant difference in what the day-to-day looks like on this planet.
I think so too. That's why I wanted to ask. And that'd be, you know, you want to talk about all the things that need to be accounted for if this comes to be. I mean, that changes the way that people farm. That changes everything.
Yeah.
And
sure does.
Man, oh man. Well, so let me ask you about pole shift, just the polar drift. We were talking about this last time you were on as well. And I started thinking, well, can this be measured by, you know, if we're talking about polar drift that is already measured in hundreds of miles, estimated even beyond that, who knows? Are there places on Earth where the average person, if they know exactly what they're looking for, would be able to track fluctuations with the Earth's spinning on its axis with just a really good compass?
So that one's tough. They could track the magnetic pole movement. They wouldn't be able to track the actual crustal destabilization, because that is going to happen in one day. It's going to break free from its locking with the mantle, and it's just going to shift in one day. But they could absolutely track the magnetic pole shift. Now, there's places in the world you can't do that. United States and Canada, it can't be done. Why? Because the magnetic North Pole is moving directly away from us up over the geographic North Pole towards Siberia. And so if you've got a North Pole where your compass points, whether it's 10 feet in front of you, a mile in front of you, or 10,000 miles in front of you, as long as it stays on that line, your compass isn't going to change at all. However, for places on the coast, for several places in Europe, for places in South America and Asia, they're having to renumber their airport runways much more frequently because they actually are astride of the motion. So, for example, if you're in Europe, it's not moving directly away from you. If you're looking up at the North Pole, it's going across like this. They have, over years' time, been able to see their compasses change. Now, it's not to the point where it's causing anything titanically different in anyone's day-to-day lives, and GPS systems are updated literally daily to account for these things. Things like airport runways are updated very regularly to account for these things. But somebody who was tracking it for years and years and years and years in a place like the UK or in a place like Japan could see that. Probably Hawaii as well. But in terms of the actual crustal tilt and the change in the axis or the rotation of the Earth, I would say no, because that hasn't started yet in the major way. And that will happen when we get the actual magnetic pole shift and superinduction from the sun that actually surges the electric current right through the crust mantle boundary at a place called the low velocity zone, one of the most conductive places on the planet, unfortunately for us, where it basically breaks that lock between the crust and the mantle.
Well, there's a lot to look out for. And of course, you're always updating on your channel. Like I said before, you just put out a little bit of a space weather report just before we went live. So there's always something.
It could be an interesting couple of days with these sunspots coming back around. I am all eyes on the sun right now for more solar flares. Right now, the one it put out this morning, to my eyes, it looks like it's just going to miss Earth. NASA's model has it missing Earth. The U.S. government's space weather arm, however, the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center, they think we're actually going to take a little love tap from the side of it. Whether we do or not, I'm not sure. This one by itself won't be anything scary. I am interested to see whose model is correct on this one. But this thing is turning in. It's going to be facing the Earth by the weekend and into next week. And it showed no signs of a halt to its eruptive activity. So I'm going to be a busy guy for at least the next 10 days.
Well, we will definitely be watching. Definitely. And this is all under I have been told for a long time now that we are heading into, or we are in a period of grand solar minimum. Yeah.
Yeah. So boy, a lot of people gave me a lot of crap starting in about 2016 because I was talking about it as well. I was like, hey, guys, we're about due for this in time. We could have it in one of the coming solar cycles. A lot of people were saying, it's here now. When the magnetic data came in on the sun, starting in about 2016, it was plainly obvious that the sun still had juice in the tank. Very obvious that while it might be 10 years from now or 20 years from now, it wasn't going to be this cycle that we're in right now. The sun had too much magnetic power. And when I started saying that, I got a lot of attacks from all sides, including losing a friend I had made the past couple of years. I used to be friends with Dr. Valentina Zarkova, who would be probably the professor who's talking about this the most. And when that data came in 2016, she had unfortunately just published several papers talking about grand solar minimum now. It's here. It's about to happen. And then literally just in the few months that followed, all the data said, nope, not yet, not quite yet. And so her and I fell out pretty quickly. She looked at the data and then just refused to change her tune. I can say now that, as we're here at sunspot maximum and the sun has literally outpaced last cycle, we've blown last cycle out of the water in terms of sunspots, radio flux, solar flares, geomagnetic storm power. Nobody's talking about GSM now anymore, but in another 2 or 3 years, the magnetic data will be at a point where we can make a judgment about next solar cycle, the 2030s, the 2040s, et cetera. And I'm very much looking forward to that. I know with Earth's magnetic field weakening, there's a tiny part of me that is hoping for a grand solar minimum because I will take a little bit of weather disruption, some agricultural hits, rather than us taking more major solar flares and losing the entire power.
I was just going to ask. I was just going to ask you that. Let's say we're.
I'll make that trade. I'll make that trade.
So let's say that it empties the tank, figuratively.
Okay.
And it goes into a grand solar minimum and it really calms down. Would a calming down of solar activity puff back up, help us puff back up our magnetic shield and actually stabilize the Earth again?
No, but it would certainly give us more time.
Okay.
Because if we have a solar cycle of any strength next cycle, in the middle of the 2030s, with the trajectory our magnetic field is on, we're not getting through that one. It'll be lights out at some point, and we will be back in the Stone Age for 5, 10, maybe 15 years until the Earth turns over. It's going to be a shock to our system, followed years later by another shock to our system. If we go into a multi-cycle grand solar minimum, there is a small chance we could actually have power up until the final days before the zenith of Earth's disaster and then the pole shift. I would choose that over, a 8 to 10% harsher agricultural condition, which is what a grand solar minimum would bring. It would bring about an 8 to 10% harsher agricultural condition. That's still very significant. We have trouble feeding the world as it is. Population's not going down, at least not very quickly. And so any kind of hit in the agricultural sector is going to be a big deal. But if you have to compare that to literally everybody getting thrown back to the Stone Age over the course of 24 to 48 hours, I'm praying for a grand solar minimum. That would be lovely. Give us a few more years to prepare for this thing. I don't want to have, having 15 to 20 years is better than having 7 to 10 years. Put it that way.
Well, I think that is, if that is the choices we have to make, I think most people would take that trade too.
If only it was ours to make.
If only if it was ours to make. Ben Davidson, Suspicious Observers. Most people are already watching your updates. Those who are not, I hope they go and subscribe. And it would be wonderful to have you back again, my friend.
Always happy to do it. So many fans were so happy that I came on with you last time, and I'm sure I'm going to get the same kind of praise this time as well. We got a lot of crossover.
We do.
Thanks for inviting me on. You have a great rest of your night, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time. Have a good one. Bye. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Davidson on his way. Now, listen, we're going to take a really quick break. You might have noticed that wherever you are watching the show at 7 o'clock, is where you can watch the show for the entire way. You don't have to go anywhere, all right? Now, when we come back from this very quick breather, I'm going to open up the lines. I have some thoughts of my own about what we just listened to. I'm presenting information. I don't know what's real. I wouldn't be able to test any of this. It's very interesting to me. It is morbid in many ways, but I want to hear you. Maybe there's somebody out there that can come and I don't know, stir the pot a little bit and give us something contradictory to think about. But it makes a lot of sense. It does. And we're going to be doing that, some thoughts and wide open lines for the rest of the second half. We have a full 45 minutes or maybe 43 minutes after this break. So don't go anywhere. Settle in and get your phones all nice and warmed up. 914-200-0269. We'll be back in just a moment. Hey, want to start your day fresh and stimulate your taste buds at the same time? Try the Quite Frankly Elevation Blend Coffee, brought to you by the Coffee Revolution in Davenport, Iowa. An uplifting mix of Ethiopian, Mexican, and Peruvian estate beans and roasted to first crack. Guaranteed to have you coming back for more. And as if you needed more reason to enjoy a fresh pot, did you know that healthy consumption of caffeine has been linked with longevity, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, boosts progesterone, increases in thyroid function, increases in metabolism, mood, and even testosterone after working out? And here's some free advice. Upon waking, drink at least 12 ounces of water with some sea salt. This will leave you hydrated and energized, and then an hour later, have your first cup of Quite Frankly Elevation Blend Coffee. You will feel like moving mountains and making babies. So choose a smooth, organic light roast with my stupid face on the bag to inject some life into your daily routine. Quite Frankly Elevation Blend Coffee is linked at the affiliates page on quitefrankly.tv.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out to press the like button. Thank you.
Rabbit season! Duck season! Rabbit season! Duck season! Rabbit season! Duck season!
Welcome to intermission. Yeah, intermission.
You are now entering, Quite Frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Watch Quite Frankly and stuff.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly, all my fellow Franciscans.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly. Quite frankly. We'll be in the gulag with you, Frank.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly.
Yo, what's good, Frank? Quite frankly.
Quite frankly podcast.
I want to get a Coke. Can I get a Coke?
So everybody watch Quite Frankly with Frank.
Quite frankly.
How dare you?
I know that we have a few, welcome back. I know that we have a few pilots in the audience, and I would love to hear from them, our good buddies out there who are flying for a living commercially. And I would definitely like to hear from them about the renumbering of airstrips in places like Asia because of polar drift. I'd like to know, hey, is this going on, and is this the stated reason? So that's one. Love to hear from some of our pilot friends. But it's interesting, you know, you go back a couple of years. If I go back a few years, I'm rereading some stuff and watching some interviews with people like Robert Schoch, who I've tried to get on this show before, but I just fear that I'm not academic enough. There's a few people that have politely said, no, thank you. We only, just a little bit too rough around the edges, I guess. But anyway, Robert Schoch, his work mainly focused around the Sphinx and the evidence of water erosion around the Sphinx. But to consider the same for the pyramids was something, it's on such a bigger scale, an alien scale. You think about, I don't know, hundreds of feet, at least 300 feet. Now, is that a wave? Is that a big, fast-moving, sand-filled, debris-filled, sloshing wave that was able to strip the pyramids of its limestone, sheathing in a quick motion, or was it something that was a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more immobile? I can't imagine North Africa with an ocean. North Africa with an ocean just sitting there. So it has to be one thing, or either way, you start looking at things with different eyes, and there just may be, everything points to, at least for me, that there are just huge pieces of our story missing or just not being told altogether. And it doesn't always have to be about malice. It just has to be about maybe we just don't have enough. Maybe we just don't have enough, and then our pride blinds us after a while once we come up with the more comforting theories that appeases our logic and this and that. You just don't know. But I think we're getting closer to at least asking some better questions. As always, that's what I always prioritize over everything else, is better questions. Okay. Let's see. And you know what? The other thing there too is, speaking of rich people building inconspicuous hideaways, it is an incredible thing. I was talking about being in Maine, and it was incredible being reminded about just how much Maine, specifically the Bar Harbor area, the Acadia National Park area, was how important it was to J.P. Morgan, the Astors, the Rockefellers, the Fords. I mean, the whole Jekyll Island crew. They put a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of influence into the development of that part of Maine. I don't know about the rest of the state, but every time we go there and we do some local tours and trolley rides and things like that, I'm always taking notes. It's Rockefellers and Morgans and Astors and Fords all over the place. The whole town seems to have been built by them for them at one point, and most of their personal mansions were conveniently completed just before the crash of 29, which is said to have been triggered by people like J.P. Morgan's rumor milling. Yeah, that's just crazy. And the fact that they have that strange placement of the Jackson Biological Laboratory just tucked away inside of the national park itself, where you can be just driving along the routes there inside the park, and I don't know, you see the barbed wire and everything. God knows what strange chimeras, what strange chimeric creatures are being kept half a mile underground over there. But it's regardless, it's a wonderful place. I love Maine, at least Bar Harbor. It's really, really wonderful. The front, right now, lilacs are in bloom over there, all over the place. There are gigantic lilac trees all over the place in that part of Maine, and it's heaven. The front yard of the inn that we stayed at, set up to be some sort of a village green or something. Fire pits, lawn chairs all over the place, gravel paths, just, cutting through these lush gardens and all that. And there's an outdoor bar and live music every day at 2 p.m. Well, I was thinking about polar drifting and shifting and what the hell that may mean. Is it really going to happen in our lifetime? And what kind of a disruption of that would be? Well, I said, okay, well, I'm not thinking about that right now. I've got this beautiful family with me in Bar Harbor. We're going to take a little stroll. And man, me and Aurora, we gave Lauren some time to get herself ready one night. It might have been like a Friday or a Saturday night or something. just before we were going out to dinner. So I told Aurora, hey, let's go outside. You and me, let's go outside and listen to some of the live music. 2 p.m., a woman usually shows up with an acoustic guitar, and it's really nice. You just sit out there in the shade of a tree, and I am just in soak it up mode. And I keep myself in that mode a lot. Every step, I'm looking around, taking things in, smelling the air, especially out there. Studying Aurora, too. Studying her as she frolics about. And we're sitting there under this tree on Friday night or Saturday night, just before dinner, and we're listening to the music, and there's other people out there, and everybody's so friendly. It's like being on the set of a Hallmark film. It was very odd. She loved it. Aurora loved it because, of course, she says hi to everybody. She dances all over the place, and people complimenting. It was nice. But we're sitting there, and this little 3-year-old leans over to me, and she says, "Just enjoy it, Dad." And I wasn't saying anything. I was enjoying it. I was looking around. I was just taking things in and just being grateful. And she leans over and she says, "Just enjoy it, Dad." I said, "Oh, I am, baby. I am." The 3 days in Maine, they were dreamlike. Every lap we did up and down that 1/4-mile strip of Bar Harbor, that street. That was a stroll through heaven. Every 1/4 mile. I hope that there is a moving imprint of me and Lauren and 3-year-old Aurora shuffling around on those streets on loop forever. Just 3 happy ghosts. I just hope forever. That would be that'd be nice to know we left that little bit of an imprint behind. Okay, so even though because one day we might be 3 happy ghosts walking underwater, there's that. So I have a little bit of stuff here for you. I'm going to put the call-in line up on the screen, but I'm so you can get the calls generated. But I won't be taking calls for another maybe about 2 minutes or so because I got this email I want to read to you. It's from a member of the audience. I'm just going to call him Jay. It's not Jay Gulinello. It's not Julius Gulinello. No, that's not his name, but we're taking shots in the dark here. Jay says, "Frank, I'm in my 50 plus years on this earth. I've seen a lot of things and been to a lot of places. There are two things that have occurred in the last 30 to 40 days that had never occurred before, at least here in the U.S. Midwest. I've never seen an eclipse who was then followed by an aurora borealis. In the case of the latter, in the spring, an aurora borealis. If that was going to occur in my neck of the woods, it should occur in winter, not spring. But wait, there's more." Then Tom Longo weighed in on this same topic in the last day or two. That is notable because this is not normally his type of content. Tom pointed out something very interesting. The aurora was seen as far south as Puerto Rico, that had only occurred in 1921, in 2003, and 2024 in the prior 100 years. And here's the rub. This solar activity was not as strong as the events in 1921 and 2003, like Ben just said. Therefore, how does one get aurora in spring as far south as the Caribbean? The answer, the Earth magnetic shield is weaker. That's huge. That's move everything in the news to the back page kind of huge. That's Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas stop shooting for a while to look up at something else kind of huge. Does this mean anything imminent or similar? Who knows? Tom zeroed in on something from which he will have no opposition. He will have no opposition from me or anybody else over here that I work with. That being that this is something so great it speaks of a loss of control or ability to do something about it by our elites. What does that mean in dog years? It means fire up the PSYOP machine and start implying that it's all HARP related. Why? Because the world's elite must convey they are in control even when they are not. To quote Al Pacino from The Devil's Advocate, vanity, my favorite sin. Tom went on to say that this is where our elite overlords tend to get unhinged. They cannot control and gain wealth from shifts in people's behavior that they cannot control. This is another of those examples that I cite where we can see a clear-cut case when they are lying to us. By that, I'm referencing the HARP thing. We have seen other examples like this. It provides us an excellent opportunity to note which talking heads jumped on the HARP bandwagon and how did they portray this storyline. Equally, how long in time was it before they had their talking points ready, and from whom did they receive them? Well, to be honest, I didn't see HARP. Then again, I don't know. I didn't see it being pushed by anything big. The mainstream, whatever kind of corporate media coverage I saw of the solar storms from a couple of weeks ago, they're talking about the aurora. You might be able to see the aurora borealis outside tonight. They're telling people to go outside, look at the sky. And to their credit, they were actually talking about solar activity. But I didn't see, the only place that I saw the HARP stuff from, the contrarian HARP stuff from, was actually coming from Twitter, just regular people. And I'm sure more influenced, more, larger account. I wasn't really keeping track of everybody, but I did see enough that I said I wanted to ask Ben about it. Because even for me, I'm like, okay, well, we've talked about HARP before. We know how it can be targeted. You can target it to, it's a seismic weapon. It's an active denial system you can use against crowds. You can definitely do things in the air. There's cloud busting, whatever the hell it is. There's a lot of things that could be done with this thing. But this system was active for an entire continent. It kept running. They were running enough power at enough stations simultaneously to keep this thing running for days on end to blanket entire continents. It just seemed like such an enormous job. It didn't pass the vibe check with me. Equally, not to taint everyone who asked if HARP had a role, I'm sure that there were folks who genuinely just were asking the question, did HARP jump into this thing when they saw an opportunity? And perhaps, like I said with Ben too, we know that there's so many different operations being run. I mean, this is a multi-layered cake that we're talking about here. There's that. There's HARP. There's operations that are similar to HARP. I mean, I'm still very interested in that lower Atlantic anomaly. I saw somebody ask about that, wanted me to ask Ben, but I didn't have enough time for that and a few other questions that I wanted to do. I'll crack that open in a future session. But the lower Atlantic anomaly that's supposedly emanating from a small, what looks to be an island near and off the coast of Antarctica that Into Thin Air had started calling attention to back in early April, it's still worthy of some consideration. I actually asked Brooks Agnew about that. I was thinking about bringing him on just for a quick segment to talk about it. And I said, hey, again, what do you think about this anomaly? Because it continues to keep popping up, and I think that Ventu Sky is actually thinking about just deleting it, taking it off altogether. It keeps popping up. It's not a glitch in the system, but it's just there. And Brooks says it appears to be magnetic or radio waves. It's not actual ocean waves, and we would know that because it was the signal it was registering back in April when Into Thin Air had discovered it. It was indicating that it could be attached to a physical force, a kinetic force of 80-foot high waves. And of course, to maintain that, it would have to also be moving at incredible speeds. But, the western part of Africa was not destroyed by waves within a couple of hours, so we knew it was something else. But the frequency there, the magnetics or the radio waves, that's there. He says that would make it man-made, in my opinion, said Brooks Agnew. He says we need to bunker bust that island. What the hell is it? That's something. These are the types of things that are going on all the time, regardless of solar activity. So, I understand why people like Ben Davidson are going to concentrate on what is going on Earth during a time of solar bombardment. But other than that, if all's quiet on the Western Front, I'm sure that he doesn't discount that things like this, very weird, anomalous things are going on all the time. That the Earth is going through some crazy bombardment just within. Forget about without. Okay, let's see here. And here's the last of the email from Jay. Also, from the foreshadowing category, we have the movie Don't Look Up. Again, I am saying anything. Am I saying anything that is dire coming? I don't know. If I knew, I'd certainly tell you. Let's keep our cool, but equally keep our eyes open. Lastly, remember you are a spiritual and electrical being in this world as well as physical. Things like this will affect you in many, many ways. I said, okay, so you are on the suspicious observers end of things. And here is what the PS, the postscript, came back. It says, Frank, I am on that side because when I was in D.C., I attended a debriefing by Rand on things just like this. I said, oh, okay. Now, of course, you can just say, oh, well, you can't trust them. They're going to debriefings by Rand. You say, okay. You can say that, check that one off, whatever. But this is what you and I have to deal with. There's just information all over the place. There's official stories. There's things that are being contended. There's contention all over the place. And I guess the main thing is just live your best life and get to the high ground. And there you go. All right. Where else are we going on this one? What else do we have? Okay, to some super chats. Now we're taking calls. 914-200-0269. Let me know what's on your mind. And actually, we'll take some calls right after this. I'm going to go on a really quick break. And then there you go. You and I will be together.
Here's the Independent. The future of the Earth. Is this the end of the world? Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods. What is happening to our planet? Is this the end of the world? No. We live on an active planet. Earthquakes are continuous, 1.5 million a year, or 3 every minute. A Richter 5 every 6 hours. A major quake every 3 weeks. This is all the earthquakes in California in the last week. There's a quake the size of Pakistan every 8 months. This is Kobe in Japan. Despite building codes, the buildings just topple. Very good building codes. At any moment on our planet, there are 11 lightning strikes every second. There are 1,500 electrical storms on the planet at any moment. A tornado touches down every 6 hours. A tidal wave crosses the Pacific every 3 months. There are 90 hurricanes a year, 1 every 4 days. It's constant. Is this the end of the world? No, this is the world. And I think it's time we knew it.
This is a queer fat club.
I'm queer and fat.
Okay, thank you for joining. We're just introducing ourselves at the moment.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Joe?
Yeah, my name's Joe. I go by he, they, and I identify as 275 pounds.
Okay.
I feel like Jay's kind of making fun of me, though. I know it's kind of a shock. I know. Kind of a new thing.
I'm just,
Do what?
I said I apologize.
Oh, no, you're good.
Are you comfortable leaving the group at the moment?
Why?
I'm not understanding why you're joining the group.
This is the queer and fat group now?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I came here for.
Okay. And you said you identify as fat?
Yeah.
Okay. This is just for fat-bodied people.
Yeah, I understand. I identify as a fat-bodied person.
I'm not understanding where you're coming from.
Are you guys comfortable with me here? I mean, I'm pretty chill on my end.
I'm not comfortable, no.
Can we take like a vote?
Okay. Take some calls on anything you want at this point. Anything you want. Open-minded approaches. In my previous post, I focus on billionaires considering Alaska or New Zealand for survival of the cyclical event caused by the shifting of the poles. And it's a Gordon Michael Scallion map that I showed you before. Now, I've heard interviews with Gordon Michael Scallion. I can't tell you how many have popped up on old episodes of Coast to Coast. I've heard it many times. And, you know, in the middle of the conversation, we've had conversations that are not very rosy. Now, obviously, even though Ben, this is the way that he's reading the tea leaves, he doesn't seem like a guy who's given up on life, given up on anything. Still, you know, out there living his best life. And that's what we all have to do. But there's a big part inside of me. There's a big chunk inside of me that's just like, man, as I hear myself carrying these, you know, opening up these conversations for a larger audience, I hope that one day when somebody's listening to this show in the year 2055, they're saying, wow, thank God that didn't come to pass. Good listening, good spooky listening, but thank God that didn't come to pass. Hey, welcome, Jim Zell. How you doing?
Hey, Frank, how are you, man?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's crazy. Again, I know, you know, I was up there in your, I can't say neck of the woods because I wasn't in your neck of the woods. I was up in Maine, but Maine is huge. It's like the size of Texas.
Maine is very big, and yeah. To say you were in the neck of the woods, that's like a giraffe's neck, man.
Yeah,
neck.
That's huge. Anyway, so what's on your mind tonight?
Nothing. I just was calling in. I tuned in a little late after the second half, and I heard you discussing your trip. And I'm glad you enjoyed your trip with your family.
It's very,
you know, it's always good to get away, and you could pick worse places to go.
I'll tell you, I want to go back. I want to make that a yearly thing. I love that place so much. It really, and it's a crazy thing, Jim. Because there's a lot of strange things that go on as far as the things that I have observed in a place, especially like Bar Harbor, because it is an incredibly pleasant place. It is a very liberal place.
Extremely.
It's extremely liberal. I mean, there's just a gay flag hanging from every post, but at the same time, it's like you know, it's not the subject of conversation. You can just tell. But I don't know. Maybe because they're just so incubated. You have a small little community that has about 2,000 people or so that live there, but they receive over 4 million tourists every year. It's like that. That's a community that is, even though they're very liberal, they're also going to be deep down inside very conservative because they don't need anybody for anything.
That is correct. I like how you phrase that. You know, they'll have their viewpoints and their liberal views, but you want to make sure that they want to make sure that they're comfortable and not interfered with.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the way you texted it the other day, that they're limousine liberals, right?
Yep.
You know, they can have all their thoughts on life, but they don't want anything to make them uncomfortable. Like you said, it's white and serene.
That's right? Exactly what I said. It's very white and very serene up here.
It's Whitelandia, you know, and they don't. You think they want illegal immigration to come up? They'll talk about it. Hey, you know, let the illegals come in. But do you think that they're going to populate Bar Harbor?
No,
They'll never let that happen. They'll never.
No, although they did do something very strange, Jim, and I noticed this back in 2018. But I don't. Going back there today, I don't feel like there was very much more of it there. But it seems that Bar Harbor was part of some sort of a I don't know, an African/Caribbean mix of a refugee program or something, that not only did they bring over like West Africans, but they gave them jobs in the town, because it's
and I can tell you where they gave them jobs, Frank, because my daughter had a chance to work down in the tourism industry in Lincolnville, which is near Camden, another very elite town, very liberal but very picturesque. These workers come from all over the place. They come from all over the world, actually, and they work in restaurants, hotels, because they need workers for that multi-million-dollar industry, which is tourism. You got to have people to run the restaurants, to run the hotels, groundskeeping, laundry, all that. All that takes place, and they bring people from overseas.
Oh, in Bar Harbor, they're all scooping ice cream.
With that too.
Yeah.
Scooping ice cream.
They're all scooping ice. They're all scooping ice cream, and you know what? Like I said, these are just observations. It's such a pleasant time out there, and there's always something new and pleasant I learn about the place. But that's something else. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's always a nice place to visit. And I would recommend Camden, because that also brings in millions and millions of dollars of tourism, and it's considered one of the most beautiful places in New England. Camden, Maine, extremely picturesque. It's about an hour away from Bar Harbor, so if you ever get a chance, check it out. But on that note, though, it's funny how Maine is really two different. It's a tale of two places in one state. Because up north, where I live, is the exact opposite. It's 80% conservative up here, but also 65 to 70% below the poverty level. Working class, agricultural, farming, rural. One place did a poll up here, and they had people filling out a poll. I was working for the hospital up here for a time, and on the demographic sheet, they put us down as frontier.
Wow.
Frontier. That's how rural this place is.
What's the chief agricultural export up there, especially since potatoes. I have to imagine it's potatoes?
Oh, hands down potatoes. Maine potatoes, the best.
And is that because you can grow them for longer periods of time than the year? Because I'm sure that you're buried under snow for a long time.
A long time, yeah. Our winters go from we can get snow as early as Halloween, and that snow when it's cold will stay all the way until about April, and we've had snowstorms in May, so it lasts a long time. But the soil up here is just perfect for potatoes. It's a hardy crop, and it's a boom industry up here, man. It's all about the potatoes. There's a festival we have every year. It's held in Fort Fairfield, which is the next town over. It's called the Potato Harvest Festival, where they have all these things celebrating the potatoes, and there's bands and all this and that.
You got to send me a small sack of Maine potatoes. I want to.
Absolutely, I can send them to you.
Yeah, please.
No
I'd like to. Lauren's been baking a lot of potatoes lately. I'd like to have a few baked. I'd like to, cut a few up and, crisp them up. I don't know. Send me a few.
Matter of fact, I think I tried to get a bag of the caribou russet potato, which we have up here. Caribou russets. So
very nice.
I'll see if I can send you a bag.
All right, man. Well, listen, it's great to hear from you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, good talking with you, and I'm glad you enjoyed your trip.
You got it. Maybe next time we'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we should. We should try to plan that, because that would be fun.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Okay, Frank. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There you go. 914T. We could talk about anything. And we just learned a little bit about Maine. If you haven't been there, now you know a little bit. All right. Into the grab bag, or into the super chats. Let's see what people are saying. And over on, quite frankly, superchat.com, Zachary Lark says, good evening. Love both your channels. I do watch Ben most mornings. Can you ask him? Darn it. This came in right as I was ending the call. Can you ask him if he's found any correlation between the Carrington event and Krakatoa? They were a couple of years apart, but close. Thanks. I'm going to copy and paste this into my notes for the next time that he's on. I already have a couple other things I have to ask him there, too, that came in from Patreon and Subscribestar, which is another great way to contribute to a lot of show production behind the scenes. Become a sponsor on Patreon or Subscribestar. And there you have it. Jay Britz, thank you so much. Just gives me a wave. All right. On quitefrankly.tv, C. Blanche, peace to you. Brewbark says, please ask Ben about the South Atlantic anomaly. All right, so I spoke about that a little bit. And again, that's something that I would throw Brooks Agnew's way first, only because it's, I don't know if Ben looks into that kind of a thing, but I can ask him. I can casually bring it up because I'm sure it's still going to be around. We'll maybe at the end of the summer he'll come back on. Let's see here. Sean Joe, thank you. Brewbark again says the Searle or the Surly effect generator is the only way civilization survives if we get hit by a micronova. I don't know what that is. Can you please send me a link about it? Chatty KC says, interesting topic. Just Jesse, thank you. The Sentinel says, how about some cookies? And then starts throwing cookies all over the place. Thank you. There goes C. Blanche and Jesse. Everybody joins in. Delona says, let's see here. Campi Flegrei. I've never been there. Supervolcano in Italy is waking up. Great. Well, supposedly seen and unseen. They're all waking up. Here's something that's waking up over here in New York. This is off topic, but did you see this? Because tomorrow we're going to get a little bit more about the Trump trial and the jury. I don't know what's going on here. Jim got through. Nobody else did. Got thousands of people watching, and nobody else got through. Very strange. Ladies and gentlemen, you must be a part of the show. You got to become part of the show. Outrageous. Judge in Trump case tells jurors they could be split 4-4-4, and he will still treat them as a unanimous verdict. Did you hear this? Now, I want to listen to this just for a second. It's off topic tonight, but we have 10 minutes to burn, and there's no badass yet, so we're going to do this. Take a listen to this from Fox News, retweeted by Breaking 911.
That these jurors could do. He just delivered what is being called really the pinnacle of all of this. He said that there is no need to agree on what has occurred.
This is what the judge is telling the jurors prior to their deliberation. There's no need for the jurors to agree on what occurred.
Need to agree on what has occurred. They can disagree on what the crime was among the three choices. Thus, this means that they could split 4-4-4 and the judge would still treat them unanimously. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, it's really outrageous because in a normal criminal case, every statutory crime has what we call elements of the offense. Like in a bank robbery case, it's, you have to rob. It's got to be a financial institution. You have to show intent. Those are the things the jury has to agree on unanimously that they were proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, what we're doing is taking the element that actually makes this a felony, because remember, falsification of records is normally a misdemeanor in New York. What makes it a felony is that you're concealing or committing another crime. And here the judge is telling them they don't have to agree about what the other crime is under circumstances where that not only is what makes this a felony, what makes it a 4-year potential prison penalty rather than a year or less, but it's also what gets us into the courtroom, because if this had been a misdemeanor, the time to bring this case would have lapsed in 2019. So the only reason they're still able to bring this case is because it's a felony, allegedly, and yet now the judge is saying...
Wow. Now, you know what it comes down to is that I understood what he's saying. And of course, there's going to be many other seething, drooling people who are out there saying, no, he's getting it wrong. Hang it up, retire. You don't even understand what's going on. I understand what's going on. And I'm not trained. I'm not a trained legal professional. What it comes down to is that there are very powerful people using every resource available to them to cut puzzle pieces in order to fit their plans. They're cutting puzzle pieces right now. That's what they're doing. They're cutting it up and they're forcing things to fit. Powerful people who are supported by a paid class of psychopaths, people like Keith Olbermann, people like Aaron Rupar, even that Destiny kid with the typewriter jaw. He's a fucking freak. Who then go and spew nonsense in a more intimately influential way to a virtual ocean of low-functioning, completely demoralized imbeciles who just don't have thoughts of their own. And they don't see how any of this would impact everybody. To be able to make these types of overtures, to pull these types of strings, to cut these types of corners, just to be able to get one person, which means that the standard that is there to go and make sure that real criminals are punished harsh and that innocent people have a very, very high threshold that has to be passed. A very high threshold that protects them from people who want to get them. That threshold goes away because of the corner cutting and all that other stuff. And as bad as that sounds, what we're talking about here, I'm sure somebody out there can make a compelling case as to why it's legal. It can be done. But we know, regardless what's going on, I understand what he's saying. We know what's behind it all. I mean, I remember when the former FEC commissioner said in, I think, 2017, early 2018, they said that there was no violation back then. They're trying to turn Stormy Daniels when they realized that, oh, you know what? We're not getting any traction with people on the Stormy Daniels thing because they're trying to turn it into a Trump embarrassment thing, and he tried to cover it up and all that stuff, but it was just an NDA. It was just a non-disclosure agreement, and perhaps it was a very embarrassing thing that he did not want anybody to know about, and he didn't want to embarrass his wife and his children and all that stuff, and he just, whatever. You're talking about an indiscretion from 10 years prior to announcing your candidacy. Okay? And then people start realizing that wasn't when these vultures started realizing that wasn't moving the needle for people because nobody had any real illusions about who Donald Trump was as a New York billionaire playboy socialite for all those decades that he was in the public eye, that we had no illusions or delusions about what the hell was going on with him. Thrice divorced, whatever the hell it was. And not only they realize, oh, yeah, but maybe they had a moment of self-reflection too, where it's just like, all right, well, the morality thing isn't working because A, most people already knew who Donald Trump was and they voted for him anyway at this point. And B, we stood by a fucking Clinton. Hillary Clinton was running interference for her husband's outright raping. It wasn't even just that he was like sleeping around. He was sexually assaulting people, and she was running interference. Not to mention the kind of people that she defended in the past in courtrooms. Okay? So when that didn't work, they tried to, oh, can we turn this into election interference? This and that. And it's just the fact that we're here, and they had to use and reuse people like Michael Cohen. They had to use and reuse them until they got things that could be argued to a judicial asset. Okay? How can we argue? We can have a judicial asset out there argue this. We're going to use and reuse this guy and work with his story until we can have something that we can just, I don't know, have some fun with. And hopefully that trickles down to a jury somewhere in Manhattan. You know, they fed Michael Cohen to grand juries like they fed bullshit ballots to machines in Georgia. They just did it over and over again until they got a result that they wanted. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you remember like people like Paul Manafort? Paul Manafort was sent to prison for the same types of FARA, the foreign agents violations, the FARA violations. At the very same time, Tony Podesta was found guilty of the very exact behavior. But Tony Podesta was allowed to retire. He was allowed to retire. And Paul Manafort, who I don't really, he's just a name. I don't know, have any allegiance to him or anything like that. But it's interesting to see how justice is doled out when Manafort was put into solitary confinement. And why? Because it made Trump look bad. It could make Trump look bad. A known associate in solitary confinement, a foreign agent, during the Russia investigation that yielded nothing after 3.5 years. So, you know, I don't know what else Manafort was doing, but it wasn't any different than what goes on anywhere else on K Street on any given day, even now. But the system, when the system has a target that needs to be destroyed, that's it. That's it. Everybody else can be given some, yeah, go ahead and file your paperwork. Go ahead, file your paperwork. You can retire, disappear for a couple months. You, solitary confinement, you fucking asshole. You traitor. That's what we get time and time again. That's what's going on again right now. And tomorrow, we'll see what these dimwits in the jury do. Hopefully there's some kind of a spark of humanity left in all of them, or at least in one person, that holds out and the whole thing gets hung up. But yeah. All right, well, that's it for me. A little bit of ending rant on one thing or another. I appreciate you all for really contributing to the show with the emails prior to the show, and those of you on Patreon and Subscribestar, and even those who were chatting a little bit about Ben's upcoming appearance tonight on Gilded. I would really love to, just as I'm leaving here at 8:59 p.m., is to invite you all to become a sponsor of the show. Especially that we are, we've accomplished a lot of great things over the last 5 months. And what I was doing, jumping off at the second half, we were able to float ourselves through some very, very bad times over here technologically, where this whole room had to be replaced. But right now, we are on to the next phase of the operation, and is back to really it just being mostly, and all of it, a voluntary exchange. I'd like to take a moment to encourage your voluntary free market support of independent media that you enjoy. Everything that you need to know about this show and how you can sponsor it going into the next phases of our existence is on the Sponsor Us page on quitefrankly.tv, or in the links in the episode below in the description. All monthly sponsors, you get universal perks, including exclusive access to Sunday streams, book clubs, band practice streams, quarterly raffle entries, and more. And if you want something a little bit more than the basic, then go to Subscribestar and Patreon. That's where you can become a pen pal of mine. You can subscribe to monthly Polaroids and postcards that I sent you every month. I just took all my Polaroids today. I'll send those out tomorrow. Video greetings, and now Lauren and I are going to be posting regularly behind-the-scenes stuff on Patreon and Subscribestar, and many of you already noticed that because you got very special glimpses into our main trip. You know, little videos of Aurora talking about what she's going to have for breakfast, just fun things, and even today. So at the bare minimum, ladies and gentlemen, please like this show, give it a share, give the episode a good review on iTunes and Spotify, and please leave a comment on the show topics in the comments section. It helps immensely. Thank you, everyone. I will see you tomorrow with bells on.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Quite Frankly is filmed before a live studio audience. And now, our super chatters, starting with Zachary Lark, Jay Britz, a whole boatload of our friends over there on the show topic on quitefrankly.tv. Thank you for your gold pills. The scratching has been released, and I'll see you tomorrow. Nighty night.